Hey guys, it's Julie Spencer, authorjuliespencer.com. I am going to be talking today on today's video about genre expectations in romance novels based on heat levels. So once again, in this video, we're talking about my favorite topic, which is sex. I know, scandals. A lot of what we're sharing in the next couple of videos is taken right from my book called Writing Romance is Not About Sex, or Is It? And this subtitle of this book is How Far is Too Far in Clean Romance? I write mostly clean and semi-sweet romance. And I'm not going to assume that just because the information is from a book that talks about clean romance, I don't want to assume that you personally write clean romance. I'm going to try to make it a lot more inclusive to everybody's taste, but just kind of as a disclaimer that the information is originally taken from a book teaching people how to write clean romance. So, but let's talk about the different levels and the genre expectations. There were some that was so hard for me to separate out a difference in genres that I almost wanted to group them all together, particularly like clean and wholesome, sweet romance, semi-sweet romance, religious romance. I think those are the main ones that they're grouped so closely and even interchangeably on like Amazon and in bookstores that it's difficult to separate them out, but there are some different genre expectations based on those. So it is the responsibility of us as authors to make sure that our covers, our blurbs, the back copy is everything that is going to tell the reader what is inside that book, and make sure that the cover design and stuff is for that genre. So readers often have multiple genres, multiple heat levels that they are willing to read. It's just that you got to make sure that you're telling them in advance. You don't want them expecting a kiss on the cheek and getting a sex scene in the back of the car. Make sure that you're clear on that. If they want one or the other, they will be unhappy if they get both. So we're going to talk first about the category of romance, the genre of romance called clean and wholesome romance. Now, not to imply that sex is dirty. This is just a name of a genre. I don't believe sex is dirty. I love sex. It's like my favorite thing ever. I was already in bed, so he doesn't need to hear me saying that. Yes, he's a great husband, and I want what we do to be kept in the bedroom. Okay, you don't need to know what I am doing with my husband. I don't need to know what you're doing with yours. But in a clean and wholesome romance, it's like really important that you're not talking about sex on the page. Even mentioning it is a little bit taboo. There are some people who really don't want like anything sex related in a clean and wholesome book. Now, if it's a romance, that implies that the story will indeed have some romance in it. So it's okay for your readers to experience the inner flutterings of falling in love. But there's a difference between like describing that, like the warmth in a heroine's bosom is softening her mood towards the warmth in the heroine's chest compared to a warmth between her legs. Not okay. There's a huge difference between your hero's stomach clenching or a pressure in his jeans. Not okay in a clean and wholesome romance. They're both describing kind of the same thing. If you want to read between the lines, if the reader wants to read between the lines, they can kind of get that that's kind of what's happening, but you don't want to describe it in any way. Most readers of the clean and wholesome genre consider sex to be sacred, and it's a private activity that only happens in their bedroom with married spouse. It's really sacred. So respect that for your readers. If you are going to write clean and wholesome romance, just recognize that that's important to readers of clean and wholesome romance. The heat level includes a slow burn character development where the plot of the story takes front stage rather than the physical reactions between the couple. And they should be married, and there should be a happily ever after. There should be little to no swearing, drinking, casual sex, cheating, one-night stands, pregnancy outside of marriage, touching of body parts, descriptive libido, arousal, innuendos, trips to the bedroom. Do not take them into the bedroom, even if they, in your brain, they're not having sex. In your reader's brain, if they go into the bedroom, they're having sex. So in a clean and wholesome romance in that genre, make sure they don't go into the bedroom. So of course there are exceptions to every rule, and we have to let our characters tell their own stories and make sure that we're being true to our characters, but also you as the writer can make some strategic choices about what you will allow your characters to do in your novel. So readers are sometimes very unforgiving in this category. When in doubt, leave it out, or choose a different category for your heat level. So the next category we're going to talk about is sweet romance. So sweet romance is kind of a little bit of a step up from the clean and wholesome, which is a lot more strict about what can be included. Side note about sweet romance, okay? This term has been hijacked to mean so many different things, and lots of people are using it because it's marketable. And so even people who are writing steamy stuff are using the words sweet romance, and that is really bothersome to the reader. But at this point, it's been hijacked so many times that it's nearly impossible to know exactly what the original intent of the genre was. But I'm going to kind of give you, this is a little bit of Julie's opinion based on, I've read a ton of sweet romance. I have a lot of friends who write sweet romance. I kind of know enough about the genre to be able to describe what I think that sweet romance with the intention was. And again, the responsibility is on us as authors to make sure that our covers, blurbs, the copywriting is very clear as to what's in the story. So I did consider grouping sweet romance in with clean and wholesome, but there is a slight difference. Sweet romance is almost what I would call sticky sweet. I don't say that in a bad way. I read tons of sweet romance, and I try to write sweet romance. Doesn't usually work. Something always gets in my way, and it's either Christian or semi-sweet. I know that sounds strange, but actually you can get away with a lot of sex in a Christian book than you can in clean and wholesome. Go figure. But I have some really passionate characters, and not all of my books are religious, but quite a few of them are. And a lot of my religious books actually do have a lot more references to sex than a traditional clean and wholesome. So sweet romance should not involve anything more than like a few brief kisses. No mention of tongue, no touching of body parts, no roaming hands, anything designed to arouse your characters or your reader should be avoided in a sweet romance. Okay, so this genre often ends with an epilogue that takes place a year after their wedding, and the wife says to the husband, guess what, we're gonna have a baby. And it's the reader swoons, and it's so sweet. And if you can keep your stories in this category, they're very marketable. I just have a really hard time keeping mine in this category. So let's talk a little bit about religious romance. I do have a tendency to write either religious or semi-sweet romance. So this is kind of a particular genre that I'm interested in. When I say that it's religious or Christian, that's just in reference to the genre. That can be broken down into a ton of subgenres. Amish is a very popular subgenre of Christian religion. I have actually a book that's a Mennonite. It's a Mennonite guy and a Mormon girl. Go figure. But LDS, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is actually a big market genre within the Christian genre. So it's a subgenre within the Christian genre. So if you can incorporate that in, that's a great one. Amish is great. Latter-day Saints is great. I know of some Muslim books that are, again, they have a really strict no sex before marriage also. And so the Muslim books that I am aware of are they're kind of cool because they actually share some similar values to Christians. I mean, they are a monotheistic religion. So again, Jewish also. I don't know of very many Jewish romance books. There are a few. But also in this category, there's a lot of like Western pioneer, that kind of thing that is historical, that falls into the Christian. So you're going to have some subgenres and some cross genres. But regardless of the subgenre, the main thread of the story is where one or more characters derives their values and beliefs about their chosen religion. So because their values and beliefs shape a person's character, those values and beliefs also affect how they interact with each other. So how your characters are going to interact with them, including how they interact with their love interest. So most religions have some form of recommendations about sexual relations prior to marriage. In a religious book, one or more of the characters needs to follow those recommendations. And if they are not able to follow it, it can cause great conflict. I mean, even if they are able to follow it, if you have one of the love interest who is not interested in following the rules and the other is, that can cause really great. Even if it's two Christian, a couple who are very strongly intent on staying chaste prior to marriage, and you stick them in the backseat of a car, you're going to have a baby 9 months later. So you've just got to be really careful with this particular genre. But basically the main part of the genre is that one or more of the characters derives their interactions based on their religious beliefs. So we'll talk about religious romance a lot more in another video, but I'm just kind of touching on it right now. Just be careful about anything heading into the bedroom when you are working with a religious romance, because in the religious romance, there's going to be a direct conflict from the religious values, and that must have consequences if there are. So next, we're going to talk about my favorite, semi-sweet. So this can sometimes be referred to as closed door romance or gritty romance. I refer to it as semi-sweet because it's a little on the dark chocolate side. Okay, so this is genre I love to read and write. And remember I said I love sex. Okay, I wouldn't write. I wouldn't share this information otherwise, and I wouldn't write this genre otherwise if I didn't. But as I also mentioned, I don't want to read about it or write about it on the page. I would be mortified even to talk dirty to my husband. I know that sounds weird that I can talk about it all day long to you guys, but like I don't think I could. Sex is really sacred in our lives and in my marriage, and I would not like cheapen it by talking dirty. So I don't do that in my books either. I don't believe sex is dirty. I also believe that I also don't believe that the only reason that we have sex is to create children. I've had my tubes tied 21 years ago. I'm not going to create any more children, but my husband and I have a wonderful relationship. That is a great way to bring a couple closer together. There's just no way to become closer together than the sharing of our bodies. But again, that it doesn't need to be on the page in the book. So that being said, do all my characters wait to have sex until they're married? Unfortunately, no. But if my characters have sex before marriage, there's always a specific reason that drives the plot forward. And there's usually like a consequence afterward, like a pregnancy, unwanted pregnancy, that changes the trajectory of the whole story if they have sex prior to marriage. But most of my characters, I try to keep that after marriage. So the minute that you include sex prior to marriage, you are skyrocketing your book out of the out of the cleaner sweet or semi-sweet romance category. You're starting into the spicy. So even if the sex happens behind closed doors, but without descriptions, your book can no longer be considered sweet romance. It's either, semi-sweet or getting into the spicy. So if your characters do have sex after marriage, remember that the door still needs to stay closed in this category. Otherwise, you have catapulted your book right into the steamy genres. So semi-sweet romance, closed door romance can include like tactful uses of internal sensations, non-graphic discussions about sex, planning for sex, innuendos. This heat level can also include like references to touching one another without actually mentioning body parts. So saying things like they explored each other's bodies is okay. Saying that he touched her nipples is not okay. So just like little things like that can launch the book into steamy. So with no further ado, let's talk about steamy romance, okay? At the lowest extreme of steamy romance is mention of specific body parts. Anything that can be or that should be concealed underneath a swimsuit would be considered body parts that once you start mentioning them, you're launching into steamy and graphic. Open discussions about what the couple wants to do in the bedroom is also something that's going to launch you into the steamy. Actual descriptions of what they are doing or want to do in the sexual encounters, even if they never actually have sex. Descriptions about it is not okay, or excuse me, it is okay in a steamy. So at the upper extreme of steamy is the use of like descriptive and graphic words, taking the reader step by step through what the characters are doing from the time they kiss until the time they fall asleep in each other's arms, or maybe they put their clothes back on and ask for each other's phone numbers. I don't know. We're talking steamy here, so they can hook up again sometime. Whatever, I'm not going to judge you if that's what you write, but I know that that's kind of what's in it. I live in a college town, and I know what goes on, even if like I'm old and that kind of stuff is not in my life anymore. I do know more than I probably want to know. So a word of advice about adding on-screen sex into your books. If it's not an integral part of the plot, don't include it. So unless your intention is to entertain your readers by getting them aroused, then go for it. I don't personally want to use my books to get my readers aroused or to get me aroused. That's just not what I use books for. But if that's what the intention is of your story, go for it. There have been several times when I've been reading a great story with a slow burn romance where the reader, excuse me, the reader has an idea that the characters are planning to have sex, they're going to have sex, and then suddenly the story like shifts and launches into this graphic scene describing every detail of their encounter. Then after this wild and crazy experience, the book goes right back to the storyline as if it was never interrupted. Did that sex need to be in the story? No, it did not. Did it move the plot forward? No, it did not. If that sex were taken out of that book, would the author have been able to market it as a clean romance? Yeah, they probably could have. So although the story was really well written and the plot line was great, I cannot in good conscience recommend that book to my friends who normally read clean romance or sweet romance or religious romance just because of that one scene. So if it's not needed in your book, I strongly suggest that you not include it in your book. If it's something that's part of your genre that you want to write in this, the steamy, then, go for it. But if it's something that doesn't need to be there for the plot, my suggestion is like I said, I've done research on which is the most profitable, and clean romance, I'm telling you, it's like, they've done research. Anyway, moving on. If you do choose to add detailed sex into your books, I won't judge you. But another word of extreme caution is to never use like the word Christian or Christmas on your books in the title or the subtitle, or just like make it a Christian book and include steamy sex. That's a great way to get a 1-star review from lots of people with, caution, this is, reader beware. Like I said before, when we were talking about religious romance, that a lot of religions have kind of rules about sex before marriage and how the sex is sacred. So be careful about including descriptions in a religious book. So again, our responsibility as authors includes providing a clear message to readers about what is in our books. If it's steamy, make it clear that it's steamy. If it's by clean, make sure it's clean. Make sure it's obvious to the reader that it's clean. So in the next video, we're going to talk a little bit more about the clean and wholesome romance and how you can fit your romance books into that very lucrative genre. So with no further ado, I'm gonna get off this video and we'll get into the next one later. And again, if you wanna get in touch with me, the best place to reach me is my email address, which is julie@spencerpublishingllc.com. That's it's spencerpublishingllc.com. That's my publishing company. And I also offer author coaching and publishing coaching. So if you're interested in publishing books, but you kind of don't know where to start, that's a great place. That is, I offer author coaching. We also offer editing. I've got a couple editors that we work with, a couple of author coaches, a couple of cover designers that we work with. Got content editors, proofreaders. So we've got a lot of options. If you go to spencerpublishingllc.com, you can get more information about that. And also, if you want to see my books, that would be at authorjuliespencer.com. Okay, with no further ado, I will get off this call and we'll see you in the next one.